Afenyo markings and Kojo Oppong Nkruma so much romo. Abraye speaker ahiafo ese wo bewu Afenyo submission ni na odopin. Na finance minister Honorable Kesi to Forson akrashi Kojo Oppong Nkruma over taxes because Kojo Oppong Nkruma kaje omo tax too much. Na ahwe asema Angr finance minister drop ya yemu parliament proceeding is still ongoing.
This thing started some few weeks back. I decided to ignore, but today and this very time, this evening, I want to respond. Mr. Majority Leader, most respectfully, I shall continue to accord you every respect. Please allow debate to flow.
Order 122. Honorable Majority Leader, you have the floor. Honorable Majority Leader, you have the floor. Majority Leader, you have the floor. Honorable Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, the minority leader complains about being disrespected when he's on his feet. But Mr. Speaker, to interrupt the debate of a majority leader only to show that his side is silent. Mr. Speaker, you will definitely get the response that you get from this side because it is not a point of order. It is not a point of order. When I speak and people are silent, it is because I do whatever I can to focus on the subject matter. To focus on the subject matter. The rules. Let's keep to the rules. If we keep to the rules and we argue in ways that are consistent with our rules, we will get the corresponding response from other side. Mr. Speaker, the point I was making is that I've heard my friends on the other side complain that the tax is on profit. Mr. Speaker, the problem we have with the mining industry is that if you wait for them to declare profit before you tax, very often they will find ways and means of reporting to you that there was no profit. In most industries, if you are waiting for them to declare profit, all they will do to you is to pad production costs and engage in ingenious pricing and accounting mechanisms that make it impossible for you to even tax them. And that is why in the extractive industry, it is difficult to wait for them to declare profit before you tax them. And Mr. Speaker, this government is not the one that started taxing the industry before profit. In 2023, and this country agreed. Mr. Speaker, we are not yet out of the woods. Indeed, growth inched up. We grew by 5.7%, but we are still in huge debt. We have huge arrears. We haven't paid our debts. We haven't paid the arrears. And so it is necessary for us to continue with this tax legislation to deal with the problem that it was devised to cure. That is why we are continuing with this tax instrument. And in the case of the mining industry, that is why we are increasing the tax rate. Mr. Speaker, it only continues with the policy of the fact that their extractive industries are not taxed enough. The resources are getting depleted and Ghanaians are not seeing benefit from the natural resources that God has endowed us with. Indeed, there are many who think that this tax measure is not even enough. In many jurisdictions, it is not that easy for you to get certain the terms of the relationship between Ghanaians and the operators in the extractive industry. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge our colleagues to support this policy because we need to continue to sustain the growth. They have said that the 4% that we have even said is unambitious. If we are to even retain the 5.7% growth, we need these policies. If these policies enabled us to grow last year by 5.7%, why do you think we should take them out? Why do you think we should take them out? When you are urging us to try and sustain that growth. So, Mr. Speaker, let me urge our colleagues that let us not drag this. You've seen the results of the first vote. It was obvious. There is no need for us to vote on this matter. Our colleagues are not far away from the chamber. A few of them are breaking their fast and are just around. If you put us to a vote, I can assure you that the numbers that we challenged earlier, the results of the second vote will exceed that. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't think it is necessary. I'm urging my colleagues to listen to the finance minister to wind up, and then we can conclude on the matter.
Honorable Finance Minister, your concluding remarks.
Mr. Speaker, let me use this opportunity to thank your good self and members of Parliament for their contribution. Mr. Speaker, it is important for me to clarify some few points. First, Mr. Speaker, the statement that came from the Honorable Kojo Oppong that we are taxing all mining companies and what is happening to manganese companies and the rest. Mr. Speaker, the answer is that the focus is not on manganese companies, only on gold mining companies. And so if you look at the bill that was submitted in the committee's report, the answer is that we are not taxing all extractive industry. It is only gold mining companies. Mr. Speaker, secondly, there was a comment that is the government compromising growth? Mr. Speaker, the answer is the government is not compromising growth. Mr. Speaker, you don't tax sectors that are not doing well. I cannot decide to add additional taxes on agriculture. And Mr. Speaker, and I cannot, for example, decide to tax the cocoa that is not doing well. Or decide to tax the ordinary Ghanaian whose living standard has deteriorated over the years, including the tax on sanitary pads. That is not what I'm seeking to do. Mr. Speaker, when the cost of living has deteriorated over the years, my tax policy should not be targeting those ordinary Ghanaians that are not doing well. Mr. Speaker, the gold sector is doing exceedingly well. It's doing exceedingly well. So it's only rational. It's only rational and prudent for a Minister of Finance to identify the sector that is throwing out abnormal profit and tax them accordingly. Mr. Speaker, the fact remains that we are all politicians. Mr. Speaker, we are all politicians. We have our political parties and our lineages. Mr. Speaker, but there comes a time that you decide to support your country. Mr. Speaker, the time is now. when mining companies are making abnormal profit, you are saying that we shouldn't tax them, but we should rather tax the ordinary? Is that what you are suggesting? Mr. Speaker, what we are saying is that mining companies are doing well. And so I'm surprised that you are opposing this progressive tax. Mr. Speaker, this tax is progressive. E-levy is regressive. Mr. Speaker, betting tax is regressive. We are introducing a progressive tax. That is what we are doing. Mr. Speaker, aside that, all what we are saying is that we are social democrats. We believe in protecting the poor. We believe that if the rich or companies are making good profit, tax them and redistribute it. Mr. Speaker, the tax that is coming in, the tax as we are going to benefit from, we are going to use that to increase the school feeding program. We are using that to increase the allocation going to the LEAP. Mr. Speaker, we are using those taxes to buy sanitary towels for school girls. That is called redistribution. That is what we are doing. Mr. Speaker, that's what we are doing. Mr. Speaker, for the records, this tax, growth and sustainability levy, was introduced to this House in April 2023. Mr. Speaker, for the records, April 2023, this tax replaced the original National Fiscal Stabilization Levy. Mr. Speaker, for the records again, at the time, the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy did not include a number of taxes. This tax, when MPP decided at the time to introduce the growth and sustainability levy, the party that said they believe in private sector imposed 5% profit before tax on bulk oil distribution companies. Mr. Speaker, they imposed 5% profit before tax on oil marketing companies. Mr. Speaker, they imposed 5% profit before tax on communication tower companies. Mr. Speaker, they imposed 5% profit before tax on companies providing upstream petroleum services. Mr. Speaker, the same MPP that believes in private sector imposed 5% profit before tax on companies and institutions registered by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Mr. Speaker, it's the same MPP that introduced a new tax to this House, imposing a tax on electronic money services. Mr. Speaker, they did not only introduce e-levy, but rather they imposed 5% tax on electronic money issuers, mobile money companies. Mr. Speaker, is this a party that believes in private sector?
Recognize Minority Leader. Minority Leader, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister, Mr. Speaker, on a point of relevance, I rise on 2 points. Relevance. What the Finance Minister is trying to do is to take advantage of his closing remarks to get his people into the chamber to vote. That's exactly what he's doing. To extend, Mr. Speaker, the argument on the floor is very simple. You don't overtax a company that is doing well. You don't overtax a sector that is doing well. If they retain their profit, they reinvest to create employment, and you should know this. Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister must sit down and listen. I listened to him. Mr. Speaker, because Mr. Speaker, he was misleading.
Honorable Minority Leader, a point of order is not an opportunity to re-argue.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not re-arguing. If you listen to me, Mr. Speaker, if you listen to me, I'm not re-arguing. It is his contention, Mr. Speaker. It is his contention that when a sector is doing well, that sector must be taxed for the purpose of redistribution. Mr. Speaker, that is not right. You allow that sector to reinvest
Honorable
and to
Minority
create more
Leader.
jobs.
Let's take a look at Standing Order 122. Which one of them are you coming under?
Mr. Speaker, I think he should delete everything that he has said because he has not raised any point of order. He's trying to debate.
I'm inclined to rule that the Minority Leader is completely out of order. Honorable Finance Minister, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, for the records again. Mr. Speaker, for April 2023, Ghana never had a tax of 1% of gross production for mining companies. Mr. Speaker, it was introduced by the MPP. For the first time in the history of Ghana, Mr. Speaker, at the time they introduced it, gold prices, market price of gold. More gold mining companies are coming to our country. And so, Mr. Speaker, the sector will boom and boom again. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members,